Now I have to figure out who I can give the rest of the Vivre card to. Okay, so I decided that I would make a Vivre card video based off of the fact that over the last week or so, or I'm recording this a couple of days before the chapter 1044 comes out. So at the moment that I'm watching this, the last image that I have of Luffy is, of course, him kind of going all gloop. Which other people have talked about that, and I'll let other people talk about that. But I've also seen a lot of artwork in the last, in that time frame of the fact of, well, what's going on with Luffy's Vivre card? Because, we all know that Sabo has a piece of it, and that each member of the Grand Fleet of it, Grand Fleet, Straw Hat Grand Fleet has one of these. And we know that Bellamy has one of these. But we don't know exactly what's going on with that Vivre card right now. We can assume that during the time frame when he was, on Whole Cake Island, maybe there was a little bit of something that happened with it there, particularly during some of its fights, his fight with Katakuri, and then during, just Wano in and of itself. I mean, he got knocked out by Kaido a couple of times, obviously, but, it's like when he was exposed to Queen's Plague, was he, where was his Vivre card shrinking then when it came to other instances during that time frame, and particularly right now when he's sitting up, when he was laying on top of Onigashima when Kaido was down giving his whole speech of surrender or die, and even if you do surrender you're gonna die anyway. We'll just work you to death slowly. You and your children and your wives and your children's 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 children, just, work you all to death until it's just done. And, when he's up there giving that speech, Luffy's laying on top of Onigashima, and then, at the end of the chapter, we got the whole, the drums of liberation and everything. But Luffy had to have gotten pretty dang close to death, if not, died, and then, that's maybe how you awaken a devil fruit. But that's not what this video is about. I wanted to go over the whole thing of the fact of kind of the way that Vivre cards have been shown both useful and have kind of been a bit of a curse throughout the course of One Piece. So obviously the first character who we kind of get told about Vivre cards is Ace. When he's, when they're in Alabasta, before he heads off, he gives Luffy a piece of his, Vivre card, says, hold on to that, it'll lead us back to each other. Has no frame of mind to tell Luffy what this paper is. Luffy, of course, hangs on to it, and Nami sews it into his hat so he knows where it is at any given point in time. And, then Ace goes off and he has his own little adventure, and then he, goes and he fights Blackbeard. And then, of course, he gets, really, really beat up by Blackbeard, of course, and then he gets captured. And during that time frame, the Straw Hats, they've dealt with a bunch of stuff with, Skypiea and his lobby and, Water 7 and all of that. And then they dealt with, Thriller Bark. And then at the end of the Thriller Bark, the next time that we get an explanation as to what Vivre cards are, paper of life, a special form of paper made in the New World, is when we talk to Lola. When Lola gives, Nami a piece of her mother's Vivre card. Not her Vivre card. It's not Lola's Vivre card. It's a piece of a card that came from Lola's mother. Which, of course, we find out later on is, of course, Big Mom. But at the time, we don't know that. She just says that, oh, my mom's a big pirate in the New World. Not that she's a Yonko, not that she's, one of these, big, over-the-top, overpowered things, but just that, oh, she's a pirate in the New World. And, Nami's like, wait a second, this paper, what is it? And, Lola gives him the explanation of, oh, this is paper that they use to, that you can use to, find your way back to someone. That, the paper, when you put it in your hand or you put it down on something, it'll always, slowly move in the direction of whoever it is that you're looking for, of whoever it is that the Vivre card belongs to. And, what we see is, Lola gives Nami that explanation, and then, Luffy's like, oh, yeah, I got that card, that paper thing from Ace, and he looks at it, and it looks like it's burning up. And during that time frame, it looks like it's gotten really damaged, and, Lola explains that it's well, the way that Vivre cards work is that if the person is healthy, then the card is, the same size it was when you got it from them. If they're, sick or dying or something like that, or taking a huge amount of damage, like what Ace took, of course, at, when he was fighting Blackbeard, it's shrinking. It'll shrink until the person gets better. And then, it'll, heal from there. And like, it's indestructible. It can't be burned. It can't be, it can't be like soaked in water and destroyed that way. I mean, you can lose the Vivre card, but, it's not going to be like, setting it on fire is not going to do anything to it from what we understand. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's as indestructible as the poneglyphs, but it's still pretty dang solid. I think we find out later on that it's made from like the fingernail of someone. Like you take a piece of someone's fingernail and that's like used when they make the paper. But so Lola gives them that explanation and they're like, oh, well, that's a pretty handy thing to have. And they're like, yeah, it is. And, throughout the rest of the time frame, the next time that we see anything to deal with Vivre cards is when we get to, Sab Odie. When Rayleigh gives each of the Straw Hats a piece of his Vivre card so that way they can find their way back to him after like the 3 days are done. And he's got the ship all coated. Of course, that doesn't end up happening because the Straw Hats, of course, all get, all get, separated at that point in time, and sent to the far corners of the globe, by Kuma. And then, of course, Luffy lands on Amazon Lily, and during that time frame, he still has Rayleigh's Vivre card, but he also has Ace's Vivre card still. And during the time frame when he's on Amazon Lily, he's looking at it and it's slowly shrinking more and more and more because it's it's burning up. And he's just very worried about that. And he's just like, my friends, if I got sent to a safe place, or at least I'm somewhat safe, then my friends have to be safe too. And my brother's going to be executed, and I can't let that happen. And of course, what we see happen is Luffy, convinces Hancock to help him after he has to fight his way through the Boa sisters. And they help him get into, Boa helps him get into, Impel Down, and he, fights his way through Impel Down and fights his way back up after he's, poisoned and healed and everything. And, Ivankov and the rest of the prisoners and Jinbei break out with him and everything. And then he's making his way, of course, to Marineford. And during this whole time frame, he keeps to just check to make sure that Ace is at least still alive. He keeps looking at the paper in his hand. And, it's slowly getting smaller and smaller. I mean, it kind of stopped, but it's still pretty ragged at that point. And then, of course, when, Luffy and the others arrive, he's able to help, get Ace off the scaffolding and everything with the help of Mr. 3. And, everything seems to be fine, and we all know what happens there. Ace sacrifices himself to protect Luffy, and what happens from there is Luffy, he's just sitting there, and we see the Vivre card lying on the ground, and it just burns up the rest of the way and just disappears. As Ace dies, because as long as the person is alive, the Vivre card will still stay. But if the person dies, of course, then so does the card. Vivre, if I remember my Spanish and going into Latin correct, Roman Latin, Vivre is part of vivre as in life, as in to live, or something along those lines, if I remember correctly. It's been about 12 years since I took Spanish, so okay. But, you get that idea. And what happens is, that card disappears, Aces just disappears, like anybody else that had a piece of Ace's Vivre card at that point in time, because we come to find out later, in the flashback that we get at Onigashima when, Yamato explains it, oh, I knew Ace, and, we get that whole flashback where we see them talking and everything, and, Yamato has, a Vivre card paper made up for Ace and, gives it to him, and, Ace, that's part of that paper is what he gave to Luffy. Assuming also part of that paper he gave to, probably, Whitebeard and Marco, and possibly some of the other division commanders, and maybe some other people that like that he was like friends with at the time, that he like, maybe like his crew, maybe like Max Deuce and the others may have had something along those lines, may have had a piece of the Vivre card with them. But we don't see that. But I would assume Luffy is not the only person that Ace gave a piece of that Vivre card to. And for Luffy, it's that looking at that paper slowly burn away. I kind of put that more as he was using it to at least prove that his brother was still alive, that he still had a chance to rescue Ace, and he did. But reasons being what they are, that didn't happen. Yeah. But, the other time that we see a Vivre card be a very major story point is, of course, when of course it comes to Big Mom's Vivre card, Charlotte Linland's, that they get from Lola. Because what happens is, of course, when Luffy and Nami and Chopper and Brooke and Carrot and Pedro end up in, Totland to go and rescue Sanji, Nami and Luffy and Carrot and Chopper end up in, the seducing woods. And during that whole time frame, at some point, one of the homies, I think, if I remember correctly, one of the homies tries to attack Nami, and like something prevents that from happening, and Nami can't figure out what it is, and then she like notices like something glowing, notices like this pink glow, if I remember correctly, or this glow of some kind, and she pulls out this, the slip of Vivre card that I just dropped on the floor. Sorry. She pulls out the slip of Vivre card that has, Lola written on it, and, it starts affecting the homies. And Nami starts using that as a way to, make the homies obey her and make them fight against Cracker as a, help her and Luffy, as opposed to, hurt them or chase them or whatever. Because it's, either you go to Cracker, or I have this piece of, Lin, this, slight representation of like Lin Big Mom's soul. And, you gotta do what I say type of a thing. She like uses that to like intimidate them. And I love how she does that, because it's just like, it's just Nami using her brain to fight, and I love it. Because I love it when Nami does, because it's like, yes, Nami is not like physically like the strongest Straw Hat. Physically, she's probably the weakest Straw Hat, but when it comes to her attacks, with her climb attack and now the Zeus, of course, she of course has that, but she's also like very much one of the Straw Hats that will try to think of a plan before they just dive into action to go and try to fight someone. And she uses this as her plan. And I love it. And of course, what ends up happening is during the time frame when they are, once they're captured by Amande and Montdor and Opera and some of the other ones that show up. I think Galette's there as well. And like, they're actually, when Nami states that she has this, when they find the Vivre card on her, they're like, oh, you must have taken this from Lola. What did you do to our sister? I haven't mentioned this in anything, but I don't think I've mentioned this, but I will at least give the Charlotte siblings credit in the fact that they at least seem to still care about Lola. Big Mom does not care about Lola anymore. She does not. Chiffon still does. Pudding still does. And the other ones kind of still seem a little bit to have some concern for Lola. Because they're like, did you hurt Lola to take this from her? What did you do to Lola? And she's like, no, I didn't hurt Lola. She gave me this. She's my friend type of thing. And, so they're just like, oh, well, that can't be true. And like, they take it away from her. I don't remember... I think Nami reveals that she cut it in half. She cut the Vivre card in half, so she still has a piece of the Vivre card. And then like Amande like took the other half when she decided to like, kind of strip Nami a little bit. Just okay, Amande. I like Amande because her name is one letter off from my name, but. And she's also just awesome and has a big hat, and she sword fights, and she's awesome anyway. But I just kind of, Nami like secretly tore it in half, and she still has half of the Vivre card. And then she still can use that, I guess, if she needs to like order some of the homies around if Lin Lin herself is not around. Which, I guess one way that they could confirm one way or the other whether or not Lin Lin died is, which I highly doubt Lin Lin died. I highly doubt that Big Mom died when everything that just happened on Onigashima, but when she fell down the hole and the whole explosion and everything, that like if like that Vivre card ever went away, then they would know that Big Mom died. But the other hand is like, because we don't know if her homies will disappear if she dies. I'm assuming they will, but I don't know. We'll find out if that ever does happen. If Lin Lin ever does die, then we'll get the answer to that. But that would be at least one way that they could keep tabs on whether or not, Lin Lin was still alive. It's like, oh, is the Vivre card still here? Yep, okay, then she's still alive. And of course, when the Straw Hats are, reuniting after the time skip, they all use the Vivre cards to find their way back to Saba Odi, because, you can't use a log post to find your way to Saba Odi because it's not really an island, so they have to have the Vivre cards in order to get back to the island. And, they all do. And let's see, the next Vivre card we see is, of course, Beppo's Vivre card, because Law gives Nami a Vivre card that'll lead them to Beppo, and that'll lead them to Zoe, because he had Beppo make a Vivre card at some point in time, because I think it's because Beppo is a mink, he can find Zoe, and I don't know if that's 100% true or what, but it's like something along those lines. It's like, if he's a mink, he should be able to find Zoe. And, he took Beppo led the rest of the Heart Pirates to Zoe while they waited to find out what happened to Law, but Law gave Nami, the Vivre card that'll lead them to Beppo, and then he heads off with Usopp and Robin to go to, Green Bit and go deal with Doflamingo during Dressrosa. And of course, when, Doflamingo chases off Nami and Sanji and, Brook and Chopper and Momonosuke, they head off and they go to Zoe, and that's how they find Zoe, is because they follow Beppo's Vivre card. And then I think Law has like a piece of Beppo's Vivre card too, and that's how they're able to like find Zoe as well with them. And, of course, the other Vivre card that we have is, of course, Luffy's Vivre card, which Sabo had made for Luffy. When Sabo had time to have a Vivre card made for Luffy, I don't know. Also, when he got some form of, I'm assuming, like, Luffy's DNA, I don't know. It's like, I guess maybe he could have, like, somehow ripped off a piece of, like, Luffy's, like, fingernail or hair or something like that and, like, had that used to make a Vivre card. But, as I mentioned, Sabo took a piece of the Vivre card that he gave to Zoro when Luffy was passed out at Kuros's house. He gave Zoro the Vivre card. He's just like, I'm just going to take this piece with me, and now I'm going to go. I don't remember if it's in the actual manga or if it was just in the anime, but he like stayed around and like talked to like the crew that was there at the time for a little while, which was kind of nice. I was just like, your brother's asleep. Don't you want to wait a little while to, like, talk to your brother a little bit more? It's like, nah, Luffy's fine. I'm just going to go now. But when the Straw Hat Grand Fleet forms, of course, Luffy and, Luffy gives each one of them, well, I don't know if he 100% gives it to them or if they just each take a piece of, Luffy's Vivre card, so that way if they need it, they can, of course, find their way back to him. And I would assume that, a lot of them probably don't do something as dramatic as like what, Bartolomeo does, because what Bartolomeo happens to do is he has like a moment where like when they're all, because like Luffy and Zoro and Robin and Usopp and Frankie along with Law ride on Bartolomeo's ship, the Bardo Club or the Going Luffy, whatever it was called, ride on that ship to go to Zoe after they finish up with Dressrosa. And what happens is, of course, they put the Vivre card, Bartolomeo and I cannot remember the name of the other guy. I want to say Gambia or something like that, but I can't remember his like second in command or whatever. Bartolomeo's like second in command, but like they put the Vivre card inside of like this little dome thing that I guess they can use for like directions if they need to go to find Luffy. Which, I mean, hey, that's a valid thing to do because it's, the card can move around in the thing as, Luffy moves around. And, they can use that to get find where Luffy is. And, I'm assuming that, like, the other Grand Fleet probably did something kind of similar. Probably not exactly the same, but at least somewhat similar in the fact that they, have some place on the ship where they put, Luffy's, put the piece of Vivre card that they all took with like marked on it, like, Luffy, Straw Hat Luffy, whatever you want to put on it. Because like Nami wrote Lola on the one that she got from Lola, and then Rayleigh had Rayleigh written on his. That each of the Straw Hats had. I don't think they ever wrote Ace's name on Ace's card, if I remember correctly. But they have that. They probably all did something similar to that. What of course we also see is not the Revolutionary Army. Although I would assume that the Revolutionary Army probably all have like Vivre cards for like specifically, like Dragon probably has like a Vivre card for each one of his different the leaders, Bella Betty and Ivankov, and, Karsu and Lindbergh, and, Morley. He probably has, Vivre cards for each one of them, including, like, Sabo and Hack and such. And, like, they probably all have, like, Vivre cards for each other. Because, like, hey, Sabo's got a hat. It's not like he can't, like, have, like Vivre cards inside the hat, like, lined and marked with, like, whoever they belong to. Probably in code, so that would, like, even if, like, the world government got a hold of Sabo's hat, they wouldn't be able to be like, oh, we can find each one of these people based on what's written in this hat. Not the best idea, but I wouldn't be surprised if like Sabo had something, or like Dragon personally has something on him, or like on it would have been on Baltigo at one point, but because Jesus Burgess ended up on Baltigo, and he told the rest of the Blackbeard pirates to like use his Vivre card to find him, which the Blackbeard pirates seem to have implemented this idea of like using the Vivre cards in order to like track each other, which I mean, like, given that Blackbeard does seem to think things out a fair amount of the time, barring walking directly into giant poison dragon made by Magellan, but that's at least a smart thing that he did, or whoever came up with that idea. May have been Lafitte, may have been someone else. But, like, they have, a Vivre card for Jesus Burgess that they use to, like, find where he went. And then they use that to, like, find the Revolutionary Army's headquarters at Baltigo. And then they attack Baltigo. And then now the Revolutionary Army seem to be, headquartered on the Kamabaka Kingdom. And, that's where they're based out of at the moment from what we've seen. We also know that there was a Vivre card that Jack used to make his way to Zoe. That seems to be probably something that was like a Vivre card that like Conjuro created, and then he like used that to send to them for like Jack to find his way to Zoe when he was trying to get Raizo. And then there's a couple of non-canon ones as well. Z from film Zed. Ein, who is the second in command, has a Vivre card that she uses to lead to him. I like Ein, she's fun. There's also Burndy World from the 3D2Y special movie that they did. I think he has like a Vivre card. Use that, or no, Boa Hancock uses, I think, a Vivre card to like track him at some point. And then we see a couple of other times when Vivre cards are used by the Marines in order to track the pirates, which I'm like, okay, decent answer there. So we see those. Vivre is also part of French, means, to live. I think another translation that they had for it was a Bibli card, which I guess is just another variation of how it could have been, translated. And I know that one of the things that they do for like the data books that they do for One Piece, they have like the Vivre card data books that they do, that come out every now and then that just have like extra things that are not written in the manga. And it's not something that was put in like an SBS. So it's like here in this additional book that they set out every now and then, when like they have enough information built up for that. One thing that I always thought would be a wise decision for what they could do when it comes to Vivre cards, for what the Straw Hats could do, is, well, they'd have to find people who can make the Vivre cards, obviously. There's obviously someone on Wano that can make Vivre cards because that's where Ace got his, and there's obviously someone probably on like Dressrosa that can make Vivre cards because Sabo had one made for Luffy. In the midst of a giant attack done by Doflamingo, someone is out there making Vivre cards. Or maybe Sabo knows how to make a Vivre card. I don't know. Because we've never been told the exact process for how you make a Vivre card. But what I always thought would be like a wise thing for the Straw Hats to do would be to have, Vivre cards made for each other. And then, like, they each have something on them. Like, Zoro has his, swords, that maybe he can have something attached to the swords. Not that it would be a very heavy thing, but just something that could be in the swords or be, like, in the sheaths of the swords or something that he could use that would have, a piece of Vivre card from each of the different Straw Hats, and then have that written on them, their names written on them. And, like, Nami has her climb attack, so it's like she could possibly do something with that for, have a Vivre card with her to like track each one of them, or something along those lines. Frankie could always just like have like a hidden compartment inside of himself to like have like the Vivre cards all there if he ever needed it. I always thought that would be like a wise decision. Like, it's something inconspicuous that no one's really gonna notice, but it's like Luffy has his hat, and that's where he kept Ace's Vivre card, and then now that's where he had Rayleigh's Vivre card in there, and I think he has someone else's Vivre card right now, but I can't figure out who that would have been off the top of my head. I want to say Rayleigh still, but I don't know. And then, we know that Nami still has a piece of Linlin's Vivre card that she uses, or that she can use, if necessary. So, actually, I think I do have something in my notes about the Vivre card that Luffy would have had on him. So yeah, I think it is just another Vivre card that he had, that I guess he uses, that's just like his Vivre card that he can like give out to people, I guess. And I really hope that, I do want Yamato to join the Straw Hats. I also want Carrot to join the Straw Hats because I'm the bunny, and I want the Straw Hats to have Yamato on the crew because I love her. Or have Carrot on the crew. I love Yamato as well, but I have Carrot on the crew because she's a bunny, and she goes along with the moon, so she's kind of a moon bunny, and I love that idea. I have a little white bunny sitting on top of a white thing that looks like the moon right now, but white lamp. But I just always thought that it would be interesting is, since Luffy now has the ability to have these, has the Vivre card, like, he can rip off a piece and, like, give it to Momonosuke before they leave Wano. Even if Momonosuke stays in Wano to be Shogun, or if Hiyori stays in Wano to be Shogun, with the scabbards and everything, that, if that does become the case, then, Luffy or one of the Straw Hats can like rip off a piece of like Luffy's Vivre card and like give it to them. So be like, okay, you keep this with you, and it'll tell you how to find Luffy if we ever need you to, and you can use it to make sure that Luffy is like still alive, and like and they do that. That would just strike me as a very wise decision. And, I would assume that, like, a lot of the other emperors, like, I would assume that, like, Shanks has a Vivre card made that he, like, has given to members of his crew, Yasopp and Ben Beckman and Lucky Roo and, all of them probably have, like, Vivre cards for Shanks. And, like, I just always thought that that would be a very good idea of being able to be like, okay, well, let's just make sure that our allies are still okay. Like, just, like, have a wall or, like, a book with, like, Vivre cards in it, and you can just look them over and just be like, okay, yep, everybody's still okay. That I thought would always be, like, a very wise decision to do. I'm assuming Vivre cards are going to come in handy at some point in the future. It might be, because like if all the Straw Hats are, if Luffy was like literally like on the verge of death, then every single member of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet that has that Vivre card with them, including Sabo, who is, possibly being held at Marigeois right now. We don't know where Sabo is at the moment. Or at the moment that I'm recording this, we don't know where Sabo is. But like one of the things that made me want to make this video was I saw this fan art of Sabo. He's got like a chain around his neck and he's, still trapped and everything. But like in his hands is, the Vivre card that was from Luffy that we know has to be Luffy's Vivre card. And it's just like slowly, burning away the same way that Ace's did. And, and he's just like, it's just this moment of like Sabo going, not again. Because it's like, he's trapped right now. He can't get out. And, if Luffy is dying, then of course he wants to do everything in his power to get to his brother. And, the same thing would apply to Bartolomeo and Cavendish and, Sai and, Leo and, Orlumbus and, Ideo and, all the other members of the Grand Fleet would be looking at their Vivre cards and be like, oh no, something's happening with Luffy. And like they would be like hightailing it as fast as they could toward Wano, even though they don't know how to get to Wano, but the card would lead them to Wano. And, maybe what'll happen is maybe we'll get like a flashback at some point where like that happens, where like maybe we see what happened with the Vivre cards. Most likely if we do get that type of a flashback, it'll probably be with Sabo. I would also not have been surprised if when Sabo like reunited with Dragon, if he like ripped the Vivre card that he had from Luffy, like ripped that in half and like gave part of it to Dragon, so that way Dragon would be able to tell whether or not Luffy was still alive. I would also think there would be a couple of other people that, Luffy would want to give a piece of his Vivre card to in regards to, to Garp. If he had known what they were way back at the beginning, he probably would have tried to give one to like Makino, so Makino would be able to tell whether or not Luffy was still alive. Makino and Dodon like have something on Don Island in, Fuchsia Village, so that way they could at least, without the paper telling them anything, they could at least verify that Luffy was alive. But given the fact of how many times Luffy has almost died during the course of this series, he almost drowned when he fought Arlong. He almost, he got all of his moisture sucked out by Crocodile and almost died that way. If it wasn't for Robin, he would have been dead. There's, all these other times, poison from, I think he was poisoned by Crocodile, and then he was also, in the battles, he got pretty beat up when he fought Lucci, and then, later on, several of the other battles, and, particularly when he was, in an Impel Down, when he was dying from the poison, and, all this other stuff, all these other times that he's almost been, killed, obviously not quite killed and almost not quite dead enough if this is now when his, when his devil fruit is awakening. It's just like, nope, you weren't quite dead enough. But I don't want to die type of moment. I wouldn't want to die. I don't want to die until I'm extremely old. But what made me want to do this video is the fact of like the Vivre cards have been very helpful, but they've also been very, kind of this thing of just like, okay, what are we going to do now? Type of thing. And I would just assume that if there were several other people that had parts of, Luffy's Vivre card, like if Garp had a piece of it, if Dragon does have a piece of it, Sabo does, if there's, the members of the Grand Fleet and anybody else that has a piece of it, a lot of them would probably be like, oh no, what's happening to Luffy? Oh no. And it might be for Garp, it might be a case of, I can't let this happen again. I can't lose my grandson again. I can't let that happen again. And, maybe he would go against the world government at that point in time in order to protect Luffy. It's like, I couldn't save Ace, but I at least have to try to save Luffy type of thing. We'll see. Then again, there's the whole question of, does Garp know that Sabo is alive? And because he met Sabo when he was a kid, but I think I went over that in some other video. So that's what I have for this video. I thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. By the way, this is a Vivre card for Luffy. I went ahead and made one.